I'm alone for this live as unfortunately Valentina is not feeling well. So hopefully I will do some justice to this stream without her. But please feel free to ask me any questions and to engage with me in a chat. So I don't feel so lonely talking to myself. So if you're here, please say hello and any questions that you have, please feel free to throw them my way. Well, this week I've been digging in a little bit more into research about the role of gut microbiome and skin microbiome on our health and well-being. And it's really, really fascinating because very often when we go to GP with a presentation of mental health symptoms, we are never really asked about our hygiene practices, about our strengths of social connections, about our diet and so on. And yet those have huge effects on our health and well-being, and specifically mental health as well. So it's incredibly important to understand that. Well, to be honest, actually, I don't even like the word mental, right? When we talk about mental health, what is, that word to me is loaded with so much negativity. And to me, I think when we look from neurobiological point of view, what makes us human and what makes us into who we are and what shapes our health and well-being, there are so many different aspects that influence it, including our diet, our genetics, our interactions, events that happen in our life, the whole kind of evolutionary heritage as well that we are carrying with us. And for that reason, we cannot be talking about mental health as if it's something that is separate from our body and that is something that is separate from our environment and the world in which we live in. So as we are doing the research on building our well-being assessments and indexes to identify how you can improve your health and well-being, it's absolutely crucial to include physical health checks. And that's why we have partnerships with labs, for example, to identify when you potentially might need to do some blood test or, send your samples to, let's say, check the health of your gut microbiome. Because those are really important factors that are often dismissed and not taken in consideration through, traditional, let's say, medical healthcare system. Now, why is it so important? Well, when you think about this, I think it's still quite recent that we are acknowledging that when we talk about brain and when we talk about nervous system, our brain is not just what's in our skull. We have this whole nervous ecosystem, this nervous system that is connected to our body, and it's connected to many other processes in our body. And there are huge areas of nerve fibers in area of our heart that have very different function to our area of our main cortex head, and also in our area of our gut. Now, our brain communicates with our body through vagus nerve. And what is very interesting that around 85% of the nerve fibers actually travel from the body to the brain, and only 15% go from the brain to the body, which means that we have much greater capacity and much greater chance to be influencing our health and well-being through our body rather than just through these cognitive rational processes. And the role of your gut microbiome and skin microbiome plays a huge role in that, because those ecosystems, that we are kind of cohabiting together with all of these millions of mini live beings. They have their own intelligence, and they can influence our actions, our behaviors, even our cravings, for example, and what we should eat and not eat. And if we understand the needs of not only us as rational human beings, but the needs of us as beings that are embedded with this wider ecosystem of microbiome, of environment, of other social beings, we are much more likely to do the right thing for us rather than ending up fighting ourselves all the time. So I always say that, if our life feels like a battle, if it feels like we hitting our head against the wall all the time, then we are not traveling our own path. We are not doing something that is right. And very often, some of these head, heart, and gut intelligences have their own agendas. And we can feel that sometimes, right? When we feel conflicted, when it says, my head tells me to do this, but actually my heart tells me to go the opposite direction. Or you say, well, when I think about this, I should take this opportunity or a new job, but actually my gut intuition, doesn't agree with me. So we recognize that those sources of intelligence are somehow separate, that there are different needs and there are different rationale behind some of our actions and why it's driving us towards certain things or away from something else, or towards certain activities or people and away from others. Now, when we start digging deeper into what this microbiome intelligence is, it gets really, really interesting. And I was really fascinated by this one research study. I don't have a source with me right now, but I'll try to find it and I'll share it with you, where researchers looked at the role of behavior in mice, in that case, and the role of gut microbiome in mice behavior. So they could see that there were certain mice that were very outgoing and very social, and they were very curious and would always be the first ones to explore the new mazes or anything new that was introduced to their environment. And there were other mice that were very timid and very shy, and would never be the first ones to approach any new situations. So that could be seen as this kind of introversion extroversion, if you want to compare in that way. But for whatever reasons, for the experiments that they did, they replaced the gut microbiome of these mice. And what was very interesting was that the behavior of these mice changed as well. So when gut microbiome was replaced, mice that were very shy and timid now became very curious and brave, and other way around, those mice that were very brave and exploring things now suddenly became very timid and shy. So why is it, and what are the mechanisms in which gut microbiome can even influence our behavior, right, and our character to that extent? And what was very interesting, that there were specific strains of microbiome, of specific bacteria in the gut of the brave mice that apparently thrived much better in the environment of or in the bodies of bigger mammal predators, right? So cats or foxes and so on. Which, when you think about this, that if that gut microbiome thrives better in a different environment, it will then try to manipulate the behavior of the host to then increase their chances of being eaten by a cat or a fox, so that that gut microbiome can then thrive much better in that environment. And actually, there is even one specific strain of bacteria. I'm sure there's not even one. There are specific strains of microbiota that requires transfer from one host to another in order to thrive. And therefore, in that case, it facilitates some of these interactions between, other animals or human beings, and facilitating some of those social connections to facilitate that transfer. So it is incredibly interesting, because very often, when we think about us as social beings, us belonging in specific environment, we think that we have some preferences, we have some choices, and we take for granted how much actually we are influenced by a lot of subconscious processes. And some of those are also influenced not by us as humans, but actually all of these microbiome cells that we are hosting, or kind of we cohabiting together with them in our bodies and our skin. So if we want to improve our health and well-being and even social relationships, it is important that we know how to nurture and look after our microbiome. And skin microbiome specifically is crucial for shaping our immunity, and our immune system cooperates, collaborates, communicates all the time with our immunity, because that's how we are being prepared to be embedded in the environment in which we are in. So there is this constant interactivity with our surroundings, and it influences then how we're supposed to act or feel in the specific circumstances to improve our chances of survival, and as well as chances of survival of our hosts as a host for this microbiome that lives in our bodies. Now, also, gut microbiome is also responsible for production of serotonin as a byproduct of some of their metabolism. So when we think about serotonin, and there's all these myths that, let's say, depression is some sort of hormonal imbalance, which is not the case. But the way antidepressants work is still by activating serotonin circuits in our brain mainly, and increasing the level of serotonin in our system. But if we know that 95% of our serotonin is actually produced in our gut, not in the brain, we can find other alternative ways to increase the levels of serotonin in our system without necessarily taking the drug. So what is it in our body, or maybe in our gut, that results in our body not synthesizing right amounts of serotonin, for example, right? And there are a lot of processes like this that can be influenced through our gut, diet, our exercise, but also the level of inflammation. So gut plays a huge role in inflammation, and inflammation is associated with depression. And in fact, when we test people who are so-called treatment resistant, who have treatment resistant depression and don't respond to any medication, most of the time it's because they have much higher levels of inflammation in their bodies. So the levels of cytokines floating in the bloodstream, and sometimes originating from our gut, from other autoimmune disorders, that prevents effectiveness of any SSRIs or any other antidepressant medication. So it's very interesting, because we are not just human beings that are rational, intelligent, that are kind of isolated from our environment. I think it's so important that in mental health treatment we understand the role of our external environment in which we are in, and also internal environment, which also then affects and drives our emotions, our feelings, our behavior. And I definitely recommend to study and research a little bit more about skin microbiome and gut microbiome, and those are the trainings as well that we're providing in our academy, because as coaches, as therapists, even as leaders and organizations who are responsible for our employee health and well-being, we need to understand how to create those environments and how to create those conditions where we know how to balance our health and well-being inside out. So yeah, it's really fascinating. I will be sharing more research on this topic, and I just wanted to give a very, very quick whistle stop for introduction of gut microbiome and skin microbiome, the role of our mental health. And let me know if you have any questions. And I know I'm alone today without Valentina, so it's not the same. And I still hope that you find this useful, and I will see you guys next week, hopefully with Valentina. So have a good day and have a good weekend. Bye there.